Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast called The Traumatized Man. Why is it called The Traumatized Man? Because I am traumatized. I'm traumatized from growing up in a fatherless home. I'm traumatized from growing up in poverty and all the after effects of poverty, from the lack of education. And I'm traumatized because I had to figure it all out on my own. And making mistakes traumatizes you. It really does. And that's kind of what I want to focus on, my mistakes and why I made them. Why was it so difficult for me to deal with the most basic of things sometimes? Because of my lack of self-control. Even not feeling like everyone's against you. And it's up to you to figure out how you get through life. And that could put you in predicaments where you feel like you got to do what you got to do. You begin to lose empathy for people. You begin to lose just overall reasoning when it comes to considering and respecting others, because it's about your survival and they don't know what you've been through. They don't understand your pain. They don't understand what kind of hurts you have inside, because you won't show them, because it hurts. Wounds hurt. They hurt deep, and it takes a long time for them to heal up. And I thought today would be the perfect time, I guess, after having a few episodes released and prepping a few more, that I dig into my traumatized past and some of the things that I struggled with, the after effects of that trauma, the PTSD of that, the lack of control that I experienced. The thing that people don't always understand is when you're abandoned, number one, specifically if you feel that way about your father, but it's double trouble when your mother dies. That feeling of abandonment at a very young age, I know it hurt me. Me thinking that I have to survive on my own, that the only one that truly cares about me is me. So I have to learn how to survive around the people around me, whether they're family or not. Act certain ways, pretend, wear a mask, because what you're hiding inside is it's deeper than what even you can explain as a 12-year-old boy. There's hurts that you don't even know that are there, and it damages a child. You've heard me refer to multiple times the damaged emotional child from not having guidance, not having love, not having support, really is the angry one. That's what I was. I was angry. I was angry at the world. And that anger turned to rage. And rage, for those that aren't familiar with, is not anger. Rage is a whole different monster. Rage is a whole different demon. Rage is uncontrollable. It does what it wants. It's hard for people to comprehend that. It's an ugly thing. It comes from the abyss, and it takes over. It's what it did to me. It caused me to be a person that I did not want to be. So I would stay away from people because I know what I'm capable of. And I don't know what they're capable of. It was a tough life. Alone. No parents. And I'm not whining about it, because there's a lot of people that had a lot worse life than I did. But it made me angry. And anger does something much worse, not just to other people around you, but it does something much worse to you. That's what fatherless boys are experiencing right now. They're angry. That's why a lot of people don't understand that as kids get older, there's a deep desire to find their parents. Because you want to know why. What did I do to you? How can you do that to a baby? How can you stop fighting for it? So, anger is a poison. It's a poison of rebellion. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about some things. I'm going to talk about some spiritual things, what I consider spiritual things. If you're not a spiritual person, look at it from a science perspective. In my opinion, science is nothing more than the definition of God's creation. Just dig into quantum physics. You really start digging into dimensions. You start realizing that there's other dimensions and other beings. So whatever angle you want to take it, my point is there's other dimensions. they're in control in many cases. They influence a very, very strong, they have a very, very strong influence on us humans. Just imagine this, if we're in the third dimension, we can easily master the first and second dimension. Because we're in the third dimension, we make 3D things. We think it in our mind. We draw it on a piece of paper or on AutoCAD. We program it into a CNC and we get a 3D part. Anyways, what I'm getting at is if there's beings in other dimensions, you would think that they have the ability to easily operate within this dimension. I feel like we're highly influenced without even knowing it. And that's why, I have no other way to look at it except from a spiritual perspective. Not a religious perspective. A spiritual perspective. Because my life very much has been a spiritual journey. So anyways, this anger develops in young men. Probably in young women too, but I can only speak for young men. It develops in us. And for some of us it becomes worse. It becomes rage. And the demon of rage comes and takes over. For some of us we're just big angry people, making life miserable on everybody else. I have a theory of where all that came from and the effects of that on my life. And I've determined that what that anger did to me was made me live a life with a death wish. I had a death wish. Anybody that really knew me during those times, they know that there was a part of me that just did not care whether I lived or died. I showed it in my life many times. It made me do very stupid things in life. Made me hurt people because if I thought they were going to hurt me, they were going to challenge me, I thought I had to protect myself from the evil that's out in the world. It was an ugly thing. And it would just come out of me sometimes. I had a death wish. I would do stupid things. I didn't care. I stopped caring. Watching all this death around me, I began to get familiar with the presence of death. That thing, it's a being, And only those that have come close to death know. It's a being. It has a presence. And when it comes close, there's no denying. It's paralyzing. So I've been experiencing, these encounters with death early in life. Already with the trauma of poverty, trauma of abuse, trauma of some alcoholism. Looking back at my life, I can see how, number one, how it affected me in terms of being angry with the world, but it also made me numb to the feeling of death. Now I'm very grateful, very, very grateful that I've never been put in a predicament to have to be used by death. But I very much was familiar with that presence. The thing about anger is when you're angry at the world and you don't hold value in your own life, you don't hold value in life because of your own life. You stop caring about life. Whatever comes may come. Bring it. I got to a point where I was welcoming the pain. That's why I talk in my videos about work and pain. But even I learned to channel that previous trauma into today working hard and developing positive things for my life, routines that helped me overcome these things. And that's why I want to share these things. For some, it's understanding of what someone like me goes through or had been through and why we think the way we do. But for some, it's learning. Look at this guy that went through somewhat what I went through. Something close to what I've been through. How did he handle it? And how do I avoid the bad things in my life? That's why I'm making these videos. And it's traumatized making these videos because I don't want to talk about these things. This is not something I wanted to do. I hated life. I hated the world. And I had a death wish. I was crying out to death. I don't do that anymore. Because I know what comes. I know he will come. I didn't know that as a young man. I didn't know how to release all that. and I was calling out to death. I was putting my life in jeopardy with other dangerous people at a young age. People that could have taken my life easily. It was coming out of me in violence. It was coming out of me in rebellion, not caring, not wanting to follow the rules, the law. The system didn't care about me. Nobody cared about me. Why should I care about it? I was an angry kid. Didn't even know it. Because I knew how to wear the mask. I was a nice person. I was an intellectual kid. Even though I never went to school. Didn't do homework. I knew enough about society, culture, from the different places. I'm very grateful for from the places I lived at. To Immokalee, Florida. Shout out to Immokalee. To Columbus Grove, Ohio. Findlay, Ohio. I'm grateful. Grateful for all those parts. Lima, Fostoria, Toledo, Chicago. Just being around those areas changed me. Even at a very young age, I just didn't care about consequence. What's the worst they're going to do to me? They're going to kill me? Well, then I can go see my mom and I can have a conversation with her. I remember I moved to this town and my brother already lived there and he had his friends, and of course we're all tight right away. We all lived in a little Mexican neighborhood, and this little town had a Mexican neighborhood, and it was us. There was other Mexicans throughout that area. And just to clarify, by the way, don't want to get too far off in a tangent, but I'm well aware that Mexican is a nationality. I really relate to the Chicano lifestyle more than anything, but I guess what some of you need to know is that a lot of us Mexican Americans here in this country regularly call ourselves Mexican because, number one, we're proud of being Mexican, of Mexican heritage. And number two, growing up in this country, if you move to places where there's not that many Mexicans, it doesn't matter if you're an American. If you're of Latino descent from a culture that's from Mexico, it was go back to your country, Mexican. So we, of course, that's who we are, but Mexico was never our country. We're Chicanos. Anyways, I get distracted like that because maybe I want to avoid the emotion and I want to lighten the mood. This is still an important conversation. And hating the world, being angry at the world was a death wish. So anyways, I moved to this town with my stepdad. My little brother lived there with his dad, and he had a little group of friends. We all lived in the same neighborhood. We all referred to each other as homies. That's our homie. And if we say, that's our homie, what we're really saying is that's our family. That's my little brother. I definitely have homies that are brothers. That's what we were saying. But anyways, we had this family, right? Poor kids, Mexican neighborhood in this all-white town. And I moved to this town, and we go to high school. We start going to high school, and one day we're coming home from school. There's a group of us, and these other two upperclassmen that they knew, I didn't know. I had just started going to this school. Taller, Caucasian upperclassmen decided that they wanted to fight. They were in the mood of fighting. But the one that wanted to fight, we were all kind of whatever, talking trash as little high school kids do. And the one that wanted to fight looked at my friend. He said, I don't want to fight so-and-so because he knows how to fight. He goes, but I'll fight Simon because I know he doesn't know how to fight. And as we're walking into this alley, and the fact that he called me out, he definitely was an upperclassman. I was a skinny freshman or sophomore, short kid. And we're walking up, and I'm thinking to myself, I probably don't have a chance against this guy because of how big he is. But I'm not going to let him get away with that. And I looked over, and there was a shovel in the yard. And as soon as I looked over there, my friend of mine saw me look over there, and he grabbed it and he tossed it to me. And I grabbed it and I ran up on this kid and I whacked him in half of his chin and his chest. Partially knocked him on his butt, And he popped up, him and his buddy, kind of course, got freaked out. And he screamed like, "Oh my gosh, you're crazy!" And they took off running. And as they're running away, I picked the shovel up in a spear formation, and I threw it at him like a spear. Of course, that got me a lot of, street cred in that little town, and that kid didn't want to fight me anymore. Pretty much left me alone. I thought about it later on, and I said to myself, what if I would have hit that guy in the head? What if that shovel that I threw like a spear would have stabbed him in the back of the neck? I thought to myself, I would be a murderer. Am I prepared? Now, I want you guys to know that I have always considered myself a moral man, and I have always believed in God, the little bit that I knew of him. And I'll get more into my beliefs later on in terms of religion, but I never wanted to maliciously hurt anybody. But anyways, I was so young and I was so foolish, and the fact that came out of me, that rage, that anger, that thought, that action without thought of empathy scared me. And I begin to be conscious of that. Like, what are you doing? You're going to hurt someone. You're going to kill someone. They're going to kill you. You're going to do that to the wrong person. I made an effort to stop acting that way, but if I'm honest with you, it got worse. At that time in this little town, gangs were kind of becoming a thing. And it was going from small town wannabe gangs to now they're doing drive-bys and burning houses down. I'm looking at things and I think to myself, I'm going to end up doing something really stupid. I never wanted to. I just thought the whole world hated me, and I thought I hate the whole world just because of what I've experienced up to that point. So, when I was younger, my mother, she had chronic asthma, like I said before. She died from that. I want to say she had a heart attack, having an asthma attack, I think. But, my mother, sometimes she would, she'd get upset, and she kind of always knew, she confessed a lot that she was going to die. What are you going to do when I'm gone? What are you going to do if I die? She would say that a lot. She knew that we already didn't have a stable home as much, and she felt like she was the glue holding things together. Anyways, God bless her soul. Yeah, she did that a lot. And then I watch her speak it into existence at a very young age. And you start seeing these things, you start understanding these things, and you start getting numb to these things. It leads you into an angry lifestyle. And then everybody's wondering, what's wrong with this kid? Why is he fighting all the time? Why does he got a chip on his shoulders? Insecure, defensive kid that's got a chip on his shoulder. If you haven't been through certain trauma, you don't know how hard it is to climb out of this hole. And that's why I'm doing this. To help other young men. So I begin to push the envelope all the time, taking steps closer to death. I remember one day I was on my front porch. I had a bike. I don't remember if it was my bike, the neighborhood bike. I don't know, neighbor's bike. And I was kind of just, popping a wheelie on the porch. And there was two other gentlemen there, significantly older than me. One of them had been to prison a few times and spent some time. We're talking, and we're just having, ghetto guy talk. I think I was 16, 15. That was the hot spot. Between 12 and 17 was rough. Anyways, we were talking, and we were talking about who's willing to go all the way. Who's the real one? Who's the one that really stands for what they believe? Who's the one that really will do what they got to do? And I remember that I was being in a challenging way towards this guy. And the other guy's looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, this guy's gonna kill you. And I'm like, so? What if he does? That's what rebellion does to you. Who cares consequence? Makes you angry at the world, and who cares the consequence of your angriness? Who cares about the consequence of your angriness? Send me to jail. Beat me. I've already been beat a lot of times. The worst thing that I realized as a child is that most kids have not been through, at least the area where I was at, through what I have been through. That was a bad thing to realize. These kids that were acting tough, these kids that were trying to bully me, sometimes I would just be quiet. I would watch them while they were trying to bully me, and I would go along with the act. But then one day show them that they're not on my level. Anyways, that was the horrible thing to realize, because being angry at the world and hating everybody just made me want to fight everybody, because I honestly felt that everybody wanted to kill me. It's hard going through life being at a number 10 all the time. Ready to fight. I used to like to fight. I loved to fight. I used to sit around with my homies and we would get all high and stuff, and I'd be like, who wants to throw some blows? Body blows. Leave the face open. And one of my homies broke my rib one time doing that. And I was hurting for a long time. I had a death wish. And one day I summoned him. And he came. He came to collect his bounty. Death showed up at my doorstep at a young age. And it changed me forever. And for me at the time, for the worse. So I mentioned in my other podcast that I used to run around with people that did commerce. But in one of my 3-day, 4-day adventures, because I would periodically take off for about 3 or 4 days as a young man. And when I was 15 years old, I could take off to Chicago and stay there for a week. A long weekend. You know, that's just, yeah. There was no boundaries. There was no supervision. It was just, I did what I wanted to do. I was my own man. I was paying bills. I was gone for 3 days. Partying hard. No sleep. Drinking. Nonstop. The whole time. Coked up. Smoked up. Dranked up. And what happens when you're traumatized like I was, that's when the demons come out to play. The alcohol, it clouds your frontal lobe and changes the voice of reason. There is none. I was broke up with a girlfriend at the time, actually the mother to my oldest son. And it just so happened her mother was on vacation, so there was someone in their house sitting, and she was there. And I showed up, demanding to talk, basically busted in there. You know, the people that were watching the house, I remember they opened the door, and I don't remember what they said to me, but I just know I basically just walked through them, walked right upstairs, and was looking for this person. Got with them, of course, acted stupid, arguing, yelling, whatever. Finally realized she did not want me there, because I was an idiot. Went charging downstairs, pissed off because she's kicking me out. Saw that they had a storm door that had it kind of had like bars inside of it. It's a double paned storm door with like bars with the design inside of it. And I don't remember what happened, but the rage took over. I just said, fuck it. I'm walking through this bitch. And I went charging down the stairs, and as soon as I got to the door, I punched my fist through it and walked through the door. And when I did that, I walked down the porch, looked over at the big picture window that was on the side of the house, noticed that they were of course frightened because I was an idiot. Busted out the storm window out of that big picture window with the other hand. And then I looked down. And when I looked down, there was a hole in my arm about that big. And there was a lump right about here. The hole was right about here. And the blood was pouring out of me like a water hose. So you turn the water hose on the spigot, and you watch the shape of the water as it comes out of the hose. It comes out the shape of the hose. The blood was coming out the shape of my artery, and it was coming out that fast. Every time my heart would beat, I would see a stream of blood, just a very large amount of blood could pour out of me. I remember I looked down, there was a chunk of meat that was hanging off to the side, and the blood's pouring out of me. I can feel it even now. You know, I watched a few YouTube videos of people talking about the life after death experience. And they were great experiences. They were celestial experiences with God and Jesus. And they got a chance to see heaven and describe heaven. And I was blessed. I was amazed by watching them. My experience was nothing like that. I didn't go see anything. I saw darkness. That's all I saw. So when I look down and I look at my arm and I see the blood coming out of me like that, in that instant I felt like a black tar coming over my head, almost like you would imagine oil being poured upon you, but it was a black tar that was overcoming me. It was coming over my shoulders. It hadn't covered my eyes yet. It was like covering my back, covering up on my neck. And it was so paralyzing. It felt heavy. It felt dark. I want to say black, but it wasn't. I can't tell you what color. It was like tar overcoming me. A blanket coming over me, being like slowly overtaking me. And in that moment, I knew that I was going over to the other side. And as I was coming into that revelation that I'm dying, I'm at the end of my life, and I'm 16, 17 years old. And then I hear this officer, God bless his soul, he says, Maldonado. And I'm looking at him like, how do you know me? He said, wait, right there, don't move, don't move. And I said, I'm going home. You ain't taking me to jail. I refuse to get locked up. You ain't taking me to jail. And he said, you're gonna die. Please let me help you. I know you from the gang squad. Something like that. And he walks me back up to the porch. And then all of a sudden I'm laying on the porch floor. And then all of a sudden I hear them ask me, can you walk? I said, yeah. And I walked down the steps, and that's all I remember. From what I'm told, I don't know, I haven't checked the medical records, that my heart stopped and they used a defibrillator and, restarted it and all that stuff. At least that's what I've been told. I should go check. I remember the darkness. It would overtake me and close. And then I would see the top of the ambulance, and then it would overtake me and close, and then I would be in the hospital. And I did wake up when they were stitching my muscle back together. So basically I ended up getting, I want to say 70 plus stitches, almost 78 stitches on the inside that were dissolvable. And I got 9 really long ones on the outside. So the impact of whatever glass or piece of steel that went into my arm, punctured a hole in it, almost came out the other side, definitely severed the bicep and the artery. From what they were telling me, the artery was hanging on like a piece of skin. So if this was the artery, it was just kind of hanging this way. So they had to basically do surgery, obviously, and stitch all that stuff back up. That was a crazy time in my life. I was not controlling that. I was letting life control me. And the lack of discipline that I had, the emotion that I had, the anger that I had, it destined me to death or prison. And that moment right there made it worse. I want you to keep in mind, I've been getting hurt all my life. Injuries, I've had stitches since I was a little boy. It makes me think that death has been after me my whole life, wanting to take me. I look at death like an asset, a CIA asset. All it wants to do is complete its task. And when it doesn't complete it, it's mad. It's very mad. And it chases you. Again, the presence of death becomes more familiar to me. My mother died 4 months after my grandmother. My grandmother was the sweetest thing. She'd always cook me breakfast when I was over there. It's a gateway to my heart. Then my mother died. And my sister has a baby, and the baby dies. The only grandpa I knew dies. Well, I'm locked up, by the way. Couldn't go to the funeral. And I'm not blaming anybody. These are by my doings. I'm not making excuses. I'm trying to give understanding how people can get so effed up in this life. Trying to explain before you judge a young kid that's dealing with irresponsibility. He didn't have no dad in his life. You make your own rules when you don't have a dad. And those that are there just enable you. A dad is there to teach you self-discipline. So I got this mindset after that happened to me, that I can't die. It's crazy, right? That's what that does to you. If you don't experience it the right way. There are many ways to experience near death. The other side, another dimension. If you don't believe me, take psychedelics. Drink that tea. Frog legs or whatever they do, mushrooms. Find out. There's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of portals to get to the other side. The goal is to use the right one. It made me think that I was unstoppable, because so many bad things have happened to me. And even death can't take me. Now I say that with caution, everyone, because I don't dare challenge death. Everybody has an appointment with death. So I started thinking to myself like 50 Cent. What's that? Many men wish death upon me. And when he says that line that says, he got shot and I got shot, but he ain't breathing, that must mean I'm here for a real reason. Now, I didn't think of it that way then. I thought about it like, even death didn't take me. And I've been asking him to take me. And for me, suicide wasn't an option. I just always knew suicide was wrong. I thought about it once and God stopped me. I look at suicide like you're sacrificing yourself to an altar of a demigod. You're giving yourself away. But it's no different than what I was doing. I was calling out to death. And that's why it's so dangerous. That's why the Bible says you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I was challenging death. There's a part of me that wasn't afraid to die. There's a part of me that wanted someone to point a gun at me, to see if they're willing to do it. But God changed me. And I have to tell you that story. Not because I'm a religious churchgoer, I'm not. I'm a different type of Christian, that's for sure. But it's a weird thing that happens to a boy like that. You start realizing why. And I didn't realize this until later in life. I watched this show, this movie, about a samurai who was obsessed with death. That he would listen to it. He would kill people to listen to it. And not that I am that sick, because I am not. But there's a part of that I related to, in terms of I wasn't obsessed with death. I was confused with death. I've heard that samurai men are looking for a worthy death. You know, when you're a warrior, I can understand that partly. When you spend your life killing people, it's similar, I would assume, to almost dying, because either way, the presence of death is there. I always say death comes in two ways, either to come and take you or use you. So the samurai, I think he's just so tired of killing. So tired of wondering, why is he not dead? Why is he the one doing the killing? Because at the end of the day, talent and skill, training can only take you so far. Sometimes some miraculous things happen. And I have seen God save me from death many times. That's just one story. I say all this with caution because I'm not a fool. I don't invite death. I'm not inviting anybody or anything. Of course not. I'm happy. I'm peaceful. But I am familiar. But I share this to share with everybody that this lifestyle, this traumatic lifestyle, really messes up a person. A person that, if different circumstances, they could be a whole different person. This is why I speak about it. This is why I'm open about it. Someone helped me. Someone listened to the good spirit, decided to help me. Took in a broken kid, a fatherless kid, 18 or 19 years old. That's why I tell these stories. I've had many other spiritual experiences, like I mentioned. I got out of jail and went to a church. This is a full gospel church. If you don't know what full gospel means, it means you're rebuking demons and dancing in the Holy Ghost. That's what that means. So I had an opportunity to take a journey through spirituality from that perspective. And it was a great experience. Thank you, Jesus. And if you don't believe that way, that's okay. Like I said, the more you get to know me, the more you know I'm not a standard Christian. But these stories are facts. So I look forward to sharing more of those type of stories. I wanted to share something from the heart. I wanted to share whoever's watching that I'm real with this. That was very difficult for me to share that. I don't know that I've shared that with anybody to that extent. And now I'm sharing it to everybody. And that's okay. A lot more to it. So much more. There's only so much time. My life is full of stories and riddles about why and how. I look forward to talking about all of it. I need to get it off my chest. From my perspective, as honestly as I can give it. That's what I'm trying to do. That's why I kind of stutter a lot, and I want to give the most honest part of the story about me. So hopefully it helps some of you understand what traumatized young men like myself, childhood trauma, life trauma, and how it messes us up, and why these things come out and turn into toxic things. And for you young men, I hope that you listen to this story and that you relate to it in some way, shape, or form, and you begin to see that if you haven't already been through it, you could go through something like that. And I'm telling you right now, you do not. Because I consider myself blessed for coming out the other side of that. But thank you so much for listening. I look forward to speaking to you again. God bless.